Hi everyone, it's Danny. Okay, so a viewer of mine has asked me how to get this beautiful flower arrangement on Phalaenopsis orchids. Now you may have seen something like this at orchid shows or orchid contests, and if you've ever wondered how they obtain this cascade of flowers on a Phalaenopsis orchid, then you can watch this video and actually learn how, because it's actually pretty easy. Now I'll show you a few pictures with my Phalaenopsis orchids which looked like this last year when they were in bloom, and to obtain this effect I actually didn't have to do too much. It's actually really easy, and you can perform this in your home. You really don't need a greenhouse or anything for this. Okay, so first things first, let's get some stuff out of the way. You will not be able to get this effect with a mini Phalaenopsis orchid. The reason is that mini Phalaenopsis orchids have very tiny flowers and they're not heavy enough to obtain this pendulous effect to the flower spike. Also, Phalaenopsis orchids, which are species or primary hybrids or just those type of orchids that do not produce a large quantity of blooms, they will not work with this. So what you need actually is your average, very complex hybrid Phalaenopsis orchid with big flowers that you can actually find everywhere in flower shops, garden centers, and why not grocery shops. So let's start with the beginning and the formation of the flower spike. Now the number one rule is that when you see a flower spike coming from your Phalaenopsis orchid, do not move that Phalaenopsis from its place. Or better said, do not rotate it so it faces the light source in any other direction. Try to keep it as still as possible. If you want to get it out to water it, make sure you place it back facing the same light source all the time. So this would be the number one rule and the thing that will actually create the shape. The light source can come from a window, so from one side, but it can also come from above if you have the possibility. The important thing is not to move the orchid around from one place to another or rotate it. Just make sure the orchid is facing the same light source all the time in the same position. If you move it around, the flower spike will try to go towards the light source, and in the end you'll end up with a very curly shape to it. When it's young, the flower spike is pretty flexible, so you can shape it the way you want to. But keep in mind that all your actions need to be very gentle, because as flexible as it is, it's also somewhat brittle, and you can actually break it if you're not careful. When the flower spike will reach about 10 centimeters in height, this is the time when you can actually start to shape it. The way to shape a flower spike is actually pretty easy. All you need to do is try to find a bamboo stake. Usually Phalaenopsis orchids already come with these. So when your orchid is done blooming, don't throw these away. You'll actually need them next season when you're gonna bloom your orchid. Placing the stake inside the pot is somewhat tricky because it can actually damage a few roots. If you damage one or two roots, it's pretty okay, especially if the orchid has tons of roots and is in perfect health. You're not actually gonna kill off the roots in most cases. You're just gonna make a puncture or a wound in them, but you shouldn't really worry about them. So what I usually do is try to stake it on the side of the pot because I can actually see through the pot. And if I cannot see through the pot, I will try to stake it as close to the orchid base as possible. Of course, the placement of the stake needs to be near the flower spike. So if you have a flower spike on this side, don't insert the stake on the other side of the orchid. So let's presume my flower spike is about 10 centimeters long. At this point, I can start to bring it closer to my stake. And I like to do so by using a ribbon or a very soft material. If you're gonna use clips, there's a very high chance that you're actually gonna pinch off the flower spike. As I told you, it's just so fragile and so fresh that it's actually pretty brittle. So the way I like to do things is I use this band, let's call it, which is really soft, and try to bring the orchid spike closer to my stake by tying it. Now, if the flower spike does not want to go too close to the stake, it's okay. Try to bring it as close as you can without actually breaking it. Leave it like that for a day, and the next day try to bring it slightly closer. The next day again slightly closer, and in the end you'll actually get it to attach to the bamboo stake you're using. Keep in mind though, you need to be very gentle not to break off the flower spike. As time passes and your orchid flower spike is starting to grow, you can move this upwards so you actually maintain the shape of the flower spike to a straight position. After a while, the flower spike will harden and will not be so brittle anymore. At this point, you can actually use the pinchers to attach it to the bamboo stake, but the top of the flower spike is still pretty fragile, so still use this ribbon when you're trying to shape it further up. At some point, your flower spike will get tall enough to start producing flower buds. Now this is where the light source comes in. It would really be nice to have a light source coming from one direction rather than from above of the orchid at this point, because it will help the actual spike bend towards the light source and give you the cascading look. Coupled with the heavy flowers, this will determine the shape of your spike. Now I like to place the last pin maybe just below the last note when the buds are coming, just to give it that straight appearance and then the cascade of flowers. And this is where your job is pretty much done, and all you can do is wait for all the beautiful buds to open. As long as you remember to shape the flower spike gently, and also don't move the orchid around so it's always facing the same light source, preferably from one side, everything is good. Now when the orchid opens all its blooms, you can start to move it around. If you want to place it on your table to have it as a centerpiece, your flowers will not necessarily move towards the light source again. They will pretty much stay in the same shape, and you can actually enjoy the cascade of bloom it created. Of course, good care and good environment throughout the year will determine if your orchid will produce more or less flowers, and of course if the genetics of the orchid permits it. But as you can see in the pictures, there are a few Phalaenopsis orchids that did not produce quite a lot of blooms, but they still look really nice with this cascade of flowers, this shingling shape to them, let's call it. So if you want to try this out, it's actually really easy. As long as you remember not to move the orchid around, just keep it facing the same light source until all the flowers are in full bloom. So alrighty, I hope you found this useful, and if you have some questions, if I didn't explain something correctly, just let me know in a comment and I'll try to explain. Also, if you have other suggestions for videos, you can also leave me a comment and I'll try to make a video for you. And yeah, if you want to see more videos, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye!